All right, we're live. Hi everyone. This is Winnie again, and tonight we're wrapping up the summer series with a conversation on self-care and why self-care matters. I have a very special guest with me tonight. Her name is Kiana. Hi, Kiki.
Right. Hey guys, you can call me Kiki if you'd like. Either one is
Okay.
fine. Mm.
So Kiki is someone who has struggled with depression and PTSD, and she's gone through the journey of healing. She's worked with a therapist, and now she is a huge advocate for mental health and self care, and everything like that. So I'm very excited to have her with us tonight because she's going to be sharing a lot of the tools especially related to self-care that she's learned over the years and how they've been beneficial to her. So I'm gonna start off the conversation with kind of asking you, Kiki, what you have found to be the most important pieces of self-care for you throughout your journey and kind of why you feel like it was so important for you.
Sure. Um, so honestly, one of the most important things that I've learned, and it was through self-care and through my healing journey, but probably one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life, even though it sounds a little dramatic, but it's the truth. It's just that your health and your wellness needs to come first before
Mm-hmm.
everything else. Because at the end of the day, if you're not feeling your best, if you're not feeling well in general, it doesn't matter what you have or what you do, you're not going to enjoy it.
Right.
And when it comes to your mental health in general, when you get to a point where you just feel so low that you're just
Mm-hmm.
completely unhappy with your life, um, it just it truly does not matter what you do. You're not
Mm-hmm.
gonna be happy, and there's no point to not
Right.
taking care of yourself and not putting
Mhm,
yourself first if you're not going to enjoy your life otherwise.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
and, a lot of the posts that you share, on Instagram and on your Facebook, you focus a lot on self-care.
yeah,
So, in your view, what is self-care? Like, what, do you do, and what can other people do,
yeah,
um, to focus on themselves and their own care?
sure. So of course, self-care in general is pretty self-explanatory. You're taking care of yourself,
Mhm,
but it's really the actions that you need to take to maintain your wellness and to maintain
mhm.
happiness. And that varies from person to person because we're all different.
Right.
And I think oftentimes when a concept kind of hits mainstream media as self-care has, it can kind of get muddled on what the actual concept means, and it can get simplified and narrowed down to the point where, when people think of self-care, they just think of bubble baths and face masks,
Mhm,
things like that, which are fabulous. Of course, everybody loves that, but it's also more than that. It goes beyond
mhm,
that because you are a complex being. So it's not just the superficial things. It's, your stress management techniques.
mhm,
It's taking time to rest. It's eating nourishing foods and, spending time connecting with yourself. There
mhm.
is so much that goes into taking care of you. And it's really important that people, self assess and
Mhm,
decide what actions work for them.
mhm, absolutely. So in talking about that, and I really like the way that you broke that down,
Mhm.
to say, self-care is not just about taking a bubble bath or, going to the gym or something like that. Self-care is much more than that. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like when I think about self-care, I think about it in terms like um, of a mindset, of an attitude that we have, towards maintaining wellness, like you mentioned. So throughout your journey, what forms of self-care have you been able to discover that have helped you to maintain your mental wellness?
Sure. So for me, it came down to the three types of self care, and
Mhm,
we can break it down further. But ultimately, it's taking care of yourself physically, taking care of yourself emotionally and mentally, and then yourself spiritually.
mhm,
definitely when I was feeling my lowest, I was lacking in all three of those areas. And the first place that I started, because it's kind of easy, is starting off by eating nourishing foods. Um,
Okay.
I ate like 10 foods as a kid, and it kind of progressed as an adult. All I would eat were like chicken nuggets and like,
Mhm.
fries and things like that. And as a child, it's not that big of a deal. But as you get older,
Right.
you need your vitamins and minerals, and you need to really pay attention to your water intake and stuff. So that was definitely a big one for me, was changing the way that I eat in my diet.
Mhm.
Um, and then another thing, exactly what you mentioned, is shifting your mindset. There are a lot of beliefs and attitudes that we take on as we go on in our lives
Mhm.
that don't necessarily serve you long term. And it's really important to really think through what's blocking you or what is working for you and work through that. And to me, that was really big when it came to taking care of myself emotionally and
Mhm.
mentally, is making sure that the beliefs that I hold about myself and about others really align
Mhm.
with who I am now and where I want to go be going forward.
Right.
Because definitely a misalignment between what you're thinking and feeling and what you're actually
Mhm.
doing is going to derail you. And
Mhm.
then definitely spiritually, that was something that really developed for me as I went through my healing journey, because
Mhm.
though I don't follow a religion anymore, I still think it's really important to have your spiritual practices and to be able to
Sure.
connect with yourself and have faith that things are going to work
Mhm.
out for you and whatever
Mhm.
that you believe that will happen.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so those were the three biggest things for me.
So I heard a lot of self-awareness in
Mm,
what you were describing, being able to recognize what your needs are and where you're lacking, and finding the things to help contribute to these areas so you can grow and whatnot. Um, the other thing that I see you talk a lot about in your posts on
mhm,
social media is kind of the differences between um, temporary types of self care
yeah.
and then sustainable ones. And again, going back to your own journey of healing from
Mm,
depression and PTSD and whatnot, what have you found that's been um, I guess the most important form of self-care that's been able to sustain you um with your mental health.
right. So definitely the most important for me is a lot of what you just said when it comes to self-awareness, taking some time to be quiet, to be silent,
Mm,
and meditate. Uh,
mhm.
there's so much going on in the world, especially now, but at
Yeah.
times, there's always so much going on and there's so much noise. And with the rise of social media and everything going on, you're just constantly being bombarded with information and, you
Right.
know, things are just coming at you throughout the day. And it can steer you in many different directions and you might not even recognize it sometimes. And so taking some time every single day to just breathe in and out and connect with myself and
Mhm.
at peace, even if it's just for those 5 minutes before I
Right, right.
it's really
Mhm.
important to have that time for your brain to kind of just adjust
Mhm.
and focus on what's important that day. Um,
Mhm.
meditate when I take some time to just relax and be silent with myself. I do
Mhm.
it intentional. I make sure that I am fully aware of the time that I'm spending on me. This is me time.
Mhm.
Like I said, even
Mhm.
if it's just 5 minutes, it's for me.
Right, right.
And then going on throughout my day knowing that I've got my back, like I'm aware of me and what I'm doing
Mhm.
throughout the day. So that was super important to learn, is just that silent meditation time, was like
Mhm.
the biggest change for me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely really liked what you said about making sure you're taking time out for me and knowing that you've got your back.
Right.
Because I think again, like you said, with what's going on in the world right now, and people are busy like all the time, and things can definitely move like really, really quickly.
Mhm.
And I tell my clients a lot, like being able to focus on yourself first doesn't mean you're selfish.
No.
on the other hand, you're taking care of yourself. And the way that you put it, I think was really, really great because we need to make sure that we have our own backs and we need to be able to do that for ourselves before we can help other people. So
Agreed.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
important to learn. Yeah,
yeah,
especially
absolutely.
in, like, our American culture, everybody's always on the move. That's just how it
Mhm,
is. So to take that time
mhm.
for yourself is key.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. How was it like for you to work with a therapist? And the reason that I ask this, as we were talking about before we started the live, there's a lot of stigma still that's associated with seeking help for our mental health. So I'm just kind of curious, to hear from you kind of
Mhm.
how you made the decision to seek help and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. Um, so when I first decided to see a therapist, I had just started college, and
Mm,
it's kind of when I realized that I had deeper issues that I needed to
mhm,
work with, and work on to resolve. And it definitely was a really hard decision for me because just what you mentioned, that stigma of going to therapy, to the way that I grew up and the things that I'd heard is, therapy was only for crazy people. And,
mhm,
you had to go and see a therapist or take medications. There was something very, very wrong with you. It was just a lot of
mhm.
shame surrounding that.
Right.
Um, when I went off to college, I was like off on my own for the first time, away from family,
Mhm,
that. So it was just a hard time overall. And, having friends that I'd made, it was incredible. And, having my family still was great as like a support system socially. But
mhm.
obviously, they're not professionals. They can only help me so much. And
Right.
when I made the decision to go see a therapist, I was like really, really in a low. Like I felt like I didn't have any other choices and I had to
Mhm,
do something. So just there was a lot of turmoil within myself when I was making
mhm,
that decision, when I finally did it. Like I felt badly because of whatever I was feeling in my life, but then I also
mhm.
felt badly because now I have to go to therapy. Like I have to
Right.
be with people. And at
Mhm.
the time I didn't realize like everyone should go to therapy at some
Yeah.
point. Very, very helpful. Um,
Mhm,
but back then it that just wasn't the thing to do.
mhm,
So when I first started seeing my therapist, it really shifted my perspective on what therapy means and what issues are actually out there and what people are dealing with on a daily basis. Like
mhm.
everyone has mental health to maintain. It's not just
Right.
crazy people, it's not
Mhm.
an anomaly. Like everyone needs to take care of themselves.
Right.
And another thing that came with seeing a therapist was the fact that I could put a name to what I was feeling. Well,
Mhm.
she could. Put a name to what I was feeling and show me the science behind it. It's not
Mhm,
there's nothing wrong with me. This is normal. These things happen. And when you
mhm,
have a name that you can look up, you can Google it, you can listen to other people's experiences and things like that, it makes it so much easier to work with, to handle, to deal
mhm.
with because like I said, you're not alone in it. You're
Right.
not strange. There's nothing wrong with you. And
Mhm,
you can then learn about whatever condition it is. Like, I didn't realize I had been living with anxiety basically my whole life until I got to college. Like, and then
mhm,
I knew it actually had a name. And so
mhm,
there, I could look into it and figure out what I need to do to help myself.
mhm,
I had never learned that. I would probably still be battling, struggling with it
mhm,
every single day because
mhm,
I don't have the right knowledge and the right tools to
mhm.
run these things.
Right. Right.
Um, so working in therapy was super helpful in that way, and just being able to go in there every single day and just well, not every single session. I'm sorry, it wasn't every day,
Every
but
week.
yeah, every
Mhm,
week for a while, and then it lessened.
mhm,
Every single session that I would go in there, I could just let everything out, and I didn't feel
mhm.
like I had to hide anything. I didn't feel like I had to put a mask on. Like I could just
Right.
be myself and know that I was getting the help that I needed.
Mhm,
And it just felt like a huge weight was lifted off my
mhm,
shoulders to know that I was taking the steps that I needed to help
mhm,
myself, regardless
mhm,
of
mhm,
what anyone else might have
mhm.
thought. because I was
Right.
trying to hide the fact that I was going to therapy. It wasn't something
Right.
like vocal about. But I just knew even privately that this was the right step for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so that was a super helpful experience for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's so incredible, and I'm so happy that you were able to get to the point where you decided, I might need to do this, and I need to do this for myself. When you were sharing about this experience, you kind of mentioned about how you grew up and like your uh, upbringing and whatnot, and I'm
mhm,
kind of curious um, how you feel like within the Latino community, more specifically, like within your own family, how people think about mental health care and seeking mental health.
yeah. So pretty much what I had mentioned was there's a lot of stigma, even more
Mhm,
so in the Latino community. It's just it's not something that's talked about openly. Like you work on your issues privately behind closed
mhm,
doors. And even within families, it's not common to speak up about issues that are so deep
mhm,
that it's not encouraged really.
mhm,
And um, I'm speaking generally because
mhm.
it
Right.
doesn't apply to everyone, but for the most part, it's just it's you sometimes get called too sensitive, or you're
Mm,
crazy,
mhm,
or you're just exaggerating. Like those types of things are pretty common amongst many families where
mhm,
it's seen as something that's a non-issue, that nobody really deals with that kind of thing unless they're crazy, unless there's something
mhm,
actually wrong.
mhm,
So it can be tough to get any kind of support that you
mhm,
need because there's a lot of misinformation, or there's no knowledge on, like I mentioned, like anxiety,
mhm.
depression,
Right.
those aren't seen as real issues. You just need to get over it, and you need to, keep it moving.
Mhm,
And it's not because, people don't love each other or anything like that. It's just kind of the way that the culture is.
mhm,
So going back to my family, specifically, when I started opening up and making my videos and making my posts and things on Sound Mind Gold Soul, I actually had people within my own family reach out to me and say, "Hey, like I didn't know that was a thing. I did not know
mm. Wow.
depression
Mhm,
was an actual concept and something that people
mhm,
suffered. I did not know that I was dealing with depression,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
certainly didn't know that someone else in my family was dealing with this
mhm,
issue." And that was within my own family unit.
mhm.
There was not that open communication about things,
Right.
or
Mhm,
other family members who disliked the names that they were called when they had felt certain ways.
mhm.
They weren't too sensitive, they were just anxious, and
Right,
there's
right.
reason to be. But the thing is, when it becomes something that's private and people aren't talking about it, then they're not getting the help that they need.
Mhm, mhm.
Or if it's very obvious that you need help, but people are just
Right.
you off as, just, "Oh, that's how that person is.
Mhm,
They're just
mhm.
keep being that way their whole lives." Like, they don't have to be if they, had the right support and
Right,
visit
right.
a therapist or psychologist or whatever they need. So,
Mhm,
um, in the community as a whole, but specifically my family, it has been an issue, and it is something common. And I know that there is more of a movement now to help
mhm,
destigmatize and help people get the resources that they need. Because that's another thing is there are plenty of statistics out there where the Latino community is, less likely to get the help that they need. Um,
mhm.
because of resources, financial, or just locational, uh,
Right.
the location that they're living in, maybe they don't have access to the resources, or medical insurance is a big deal. There's
Mhm,
not as widespread. I don't want to say it in a I want to say it in a proper way, but the jobs that a lot of Latinos have don't necessarily always extend them the medical insurance that they need.
right, right.
Like, so,
Mhm,
there's many factors that contribute to that. And, even just being immigrants, from generation to generation,
mhm,
you're just working to survive. You're just trying
mhm,
to get through the day, through the week,
mhm,
month. You don't have
mhm.
time to sit there and think about your mental health and
Right,
how you're
right.
feeling, or how you're your cousin's feeling or whatever. You're just trying to
Mhm.
work day to day to get through it.
Right.
There are
Right.
a ton of factors that go into it. So again, it's not necessarily just straight ignorance. It's just a lack of understanding and a lack
Mhm.
of information and the
Mhm.
resources and the tools to help each other. Um,
Mhm.
but I do see a turn in that, which is so great to hear and see when
Mhm.
there's more representation out there and
Mhm.
more people are trying to become therapists that come from
Mhm.
a Latino background. Because right now, I believe it's less than 5% of therapists are Latino. So,
Yeah, there's not a lot.
right, there's a language
Mhm.
barrier, there's cultural barriers. It's an issue, but
Mhm.
it's like
Right.
going in the
Right.
right direction, which is a positive.
Right. Mhm. Yeah, and this is why I think that is so great that you've taken the initiative to speak up and to open up about these things and to let people know that this is something that you went through, and a lot of it, it's normal. Like everybody experiences these issues at some point
Right.
or another, some people to a bigger extent than some other people, but
Mhm.
we all have feelings. We're humans.
Right.
We're not robots. And I think that it's really awesome that you're doing that.
Thank you.
So just to kind of wrap up our conversation, you mentioned in the notes that we had shared about this talk that
Mhm.
you wanted to touch a little bit on honoring, loving, and respecting ourselves through self-care. And I want to hear a little bit more about that before we wrap up.
Sure. Um, So, kind of what we were talking about earlier when it comes
Hmm.
to, the most important thing in your life needs to be your life. Um, at the end of the day, if you're not happy, you're not going to enjoy your life the way that you know you want to.
Hmm.
Something that's come out of me taking care of myself was a love for myself that I'd never
Hmm.
felt before. And everyone needs to learn how to honor themselves, how to
Hmm.
love themselves, and how to respect themselves. And
Hmm.
that is something that you need to do for yourself every single day. And that takes
Hmm.
on so many forms, just like self care does. But, that can be setting boundaries, saying no, doing things that only make you happy, not
Hmm.
entertaining anything else that's not going to bring you joy and wellness and health. Um,
Hmm.
and it can be really difficult because over time you get filled with different ideas of what beauty
Right.
is, of what perfection is, of what you
Hmm.
can be or not be. And when it comes to caring for yourself, if you're truly taking care of yourself, you know that you're honoring yourself, you know that you're loving and respecting yourself. And you can do those three things by taking care of yourself,
Hmm.
forms that you take care of yourself. And then from there, when you're in a good space, you'll be able to radiate that
Mhm,
outwards to your family, to your
mhm,
friends, to
mm,
your work, to whatever it is that makes you happy, because it starts from within. It
mhm,
always starts from within. And once you begin doing that, honoring, loving, respecting yourself, you'll feel a major difference within
mhm,
yourself extends to everyone and everything around you.
mhm,
And at
mhm,
the end of the day, it really matters that you feel good and that you are happy and you're completely capable of doing that. Um,
mhm,
everyone is. It takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of work, but you can definitely reach a point where you're happy. And it truly starts with you taking care of yourself, whatever that means to you. Uh,
mhm.
so I just think
Yeah,
that you can definitely achieve that through self care.
mhm. Yeah, that's a very beautiful way to put it, and, um, in hearing that, I was thinking, of peace and how, um, in searching for inner peace and our own, um, self, like we
Yeah,
get to that level where we have peace and then we can continue to focus on these things. And
right.
just like you said, it's not just about, um, the bubble baths. I want to refer to that again. It's not just about that. It's about something deeper. It's about that mindset shift and that peace. And that journey to finding out who we are and learning how to take care of ourselves so we can be the best version of ourselves that we can be.
100% agree.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Um, I think we covered a lot of good stuff. I just want to thank you for thinking of me, for having me on this. I really enjoyed our conversation and
Hmm.
I was incredibly helpful.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was just so very much interesting, just hearing your own journey. And like I said, I'm just really happy that you're at the point in your life where you're open about these things and you're sharing with people, so they can see that these things are real. And a lot of times, I know that I mentioned that to you before, sometimes as a therapist, when I'm talking to people about these things, they can be like, well, how would you know if it works or not when like you haven't necessarily been in my shoes? So hearing your story and you being open to sharing these experiences, like I said, I think is incredible. And I hope that our viewers can definitely be encouraged by that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Winnie. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much. Bye.